Hi there, welcome to the Crazyhouse World Championship. This is the Candidates 2022 and a match from the first round, zyxon and Mugwort. Mugwort from Australia, zyxon from Sweden. And I think the players are seated and they have started to play. So we're watching from zyxon's view, my fellow countryman. And this is zyxon's first match. Mugwort has played one match, losing 6-4, I think, to Legion Destroyer. Mugwort is a very dangerous theoretician, and he has sacrificed a pawn here in the opening as white, just to get the development going. So this is clearly preparation, but zyxon had to spend a few seconds there, and white is giving even more material. Queen sack from black there, just to try to get the initiative back, or rather trying to prevent white from gaining an unstoppable initiative. So black is a bit passive here, but material wise he's doing okay. White having a queen, extra queen, but black having two pawns and a piece. And that's an okay trade-off. But still, I do like white here, since black is so passive. But the question is, can white do anything with his initiative? One interesting move would be pawn at d5 perhaps. Although, look out for knight at c3. Knight at c3 would be a great relief if black could get away with it. But at the moment, white could be threatening to take here and then take this, and then knight e5 check. Although this knight is covering e8, so do you take the queen perhaps? For some reason I don't have any sound from my board. Maybe if I So it does look a bit tempting to take here on f7. What happens then? Knight takes. If you take on d1, is there really a mate for white? I don't quite see it. Let's say queen d8, king takes here. The king is running, but knight e5, king e6. It looks like the black king is safe with a white queen buried here on d8. But white is going for this line. super sharp, but is this really the way to go for white? Okay, so instead of using the knight this early, he uses a pawn instead. But the king has some open space. He could even head over in this direction, and the queen here is having some problems rejoining the attack. And there are squares over on the king's side as well. And I think the black king could be home free pretty soon. And he could even consider going back. So, white took on d1, of course. And threatening knight e5 or knight g5. One possible way of dealing with that would be maybe queen a5 check, covering these squares, but you could also cover f7. So after knight g5, you can tuck your king away in the g8 square, having covered f7. Some excellent defense here by zyxon. And you can probably just take, and maybe even take once more. Or can you? Looks dangerous. Yeah, might as well check instead. And white having some problems with blockers, and suddenly the queen on d8 might be hanging. And now I just don't see it anymore here for white. So many strong threats, and Mugwort oversteps the time limit, which is, by the way, 3 minutes and a 2-second increment. So impressive start there by zyxon, winning the first game. And I'm just curious what the computer says. So this is good for white, as I suspected, but not really winning at any particular point. Apparently knight at g5 was the best move, but it's not easy to find your way around here. Yeah, queen at a7, a5 was certainly an option here for black. But this just looks good for black. Yeah. So, what do we see here when they face off with zyxon as white? And zyxon doesn't mind entering sharp positions. Apparently caught Mugwort a bit off guard here. Mugwort, an excellent opening expert, I would say. But this seems like something prepared by zyxon. And of course, you wonder, why don't you just take on h6 here? What is white's idea? I suppose it has something to do with you want to let your dark square bishop lose. With the pawn and the knight in hand, this could be over pretty quickly. But let's say pawn here. Do you take on h6 or what is the white idea? Okay, so it just develops. This looks defensible for black, but as soon as white can get his hands on a knight, either bishop takes h6 or knight at f7 is a huge problem. And here you always start looking at queen sacks, but this looks a bit premature, I guess. Looks like a good, strong defensive move here, attacking the white queen, disrupting white plans, also covering f7 and g6 and e8. And I suppose you can take on d4 here. f7 covered by the bishop, and if you take d4, the queen can't take back because of knight at e2 check. So this is very annoying for white. But white has his chances the whole time here. Bishop takes h6 at some point. Still dangerous. So after bishop takes, the d4 pawn is still taboo because of bishop at e3. And now black is introducing the threat of pawn at e2, forking some heavy pieces. Also obstructing this bishop here. It doesn't have the possibility to take on h6 anymore. So do you take on g7 maybe? Oh, sorry, the knight is covering e3, of course. And also, at some point, e7 might be an idea. Maybe not here, because the black bishops are controlling so many squares. But bishop at e5 looks strong. Threatening pieces all over the place, and also a great defensive position. Black might also just drop a pawn here on b2 and pick up the rook and queening at the same time. Do we have any spectators? Yeah, welcome. Good to see you. Do you have any predictions? Haven't seen one game already. Players are down to the last 30 seconds. And this looks like Mugwort's game, if I might say so. Five. Well, I have to go with my fellow countryman zyxon. Mugwort down to his last seconds, just playing on increment here. And now white has some strong threats. And the queen at f8 is mate. I'm sure zyxon will find it. Yes, and that's over. So zyxon turned that game around. This is looking like bad preparation, maybe. Certainly a bit dubious anyway. Excellent play here by Mugwort. Apparently knight e3 was stronger, but I like the way black has handled this. But offering the queen trade and everything here was just a bit risky, and here white is simply winning. In the end here, if black takes on f8. So either a mate on d8 or f8 with the rook. 2-0 zyxon. And here white is switching to something different. He did have great chances in the first game. And let's say a move like knight at b3, you think you've trapped the queen, but black has his chances as well. Pawn at e2 is a threat. Bringing the queen out so early is very double-edged, very provocative, and usually not good, just like in chess, but it makes your opponent think. And it's not so easy to take advantage of a early queen excursion. Not as easy as you might think. Because sometimes you just end up chasing the queen around, and then all the pieces you inserted are in bad squares. So do you defend the c7 pawn somehow? What do you do? I suppose black would like to play pawn at e2, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and then the knight would be hanging. Is there something wrong with pawn e2? Well, I guess you might play knight takes b5 then. And this is one of zyxon's strengths. He is able to switch plans and be very creative, so he abandons this seemingly very strong outpost. Now that white has dealt with the threat, he just goes back, and now, having given 2 pieces for a queen, once again, I think this is promising for black. This is very promising. Strong bishop here in the center. He's ready to swarm the board with his light pieces. The question is, do you bother to protect the c7 pawn? zyxon thinks no, I'll just give it away and start using the white queen as a whipping bar, just to put the black pieces on the board with tempo. And in fact, white realizes the danger and quickly returns the queen. And do you even bother protecting d8 or b8? I mean, you can't protect them both, so maybe just let the king handle the situation. You could go for knight f4, I suppose. Threatening g2, and also threatening pawn at e2. But there's also the threat of simply queening, so... Yeah, he goes for knight f4, which is clearly the most aggressive move. So maybe hit and then run with threats on e2 and g2 and Mugwort. Your time will be your doom, I think, in this match. So, picking up the knight probably. And this is not so convincing anymore for black. Should be good for white, but with so few seconds left, who knows? Zyxon is such a tricky player. Although if you step up here to e4 or c4, d3 will come. Protecting the knight here. But with the queen, with the king so far out on the board, you always have some compensation here. You have pawns that can start building their way into the... Oh, when h5 is coming, this is super dangerous now. Probably simply lost. Yeah. There's no way this king is coming back. Cute little finish there, knight at f3. And 3-0, zyxon. Wow, very impressive. So, Mugwort clearly got the opening. I mean, this is... This is good, apparently, but here, yeah, the computer also favors black. I have a nice feeling for black here. And indeed, bishop at d8 is much more passive, so strong move, knight at d8. Great feeling, but here, knight at f4 instead of bishop at b6. Good morning, gingerbread man. Is better. So apparently this is just bad then, yeah. Something went wrong. But then again, something went wrong for white. And it went downhill pretty quickly after this. Okay. It's always easier to attack than to defend. h5 here to start with was better, but now it's just winning for black. So what's happening in this game? Here, white did not check on e6. But now he did it anyway. But he didn't play pawn at h6. But this is this different? Yeah, here black is controlling d4. So this is different. But I'm wondering about giving up that knight voluntarily for f7. Is that really necessary? Because then you have this problem. Okay, so you threaten the queen, but white just ignores it. And with one more knight in hand, black could just take here probably, and then knight at h3 with mating ideas. Well, at least if you had one more knight and a pawn. So zyxon is a super sharp player. Notice an interesting mating pattern here for white. Let's say bishop takes, pawn at f7. If you have one more knight, you could play knight at g6, take, and knight takes. Well, checkmate. But black doesn't see a mate, so is there something? Maybe you pick up. Do you pick up d1? No. I'm a bit confused here. What is the right plan for white? Is there even a right plan for white? Yeah, white needs to be really, really careful. But black also needs to be careful, because if you spend your pieces, a simple little bishop check here could be the end of it all, because you don't have any good pieces to block with. So if the knight blocks, you just take it, and then knight at g6. And this could very well be over. What happens? Bishop takes, you need to take with the king. So white takes his time and just calmly picks up a bishop here. He's threatening to take on f3. And now black has some serious threats. Threatening, obviously, queen mate in the corner. But at least white has knight check here. But is that really... Oh, I'm blind here. You don't want the king to go back into the corner. So black needs to take with a knight. And now it looks as if it is safe. This bishop is also covering. So this will probably not end so well for white, but he made it to a safe square. Knight g2 is a threat, but king can go into the corner. Some relative safety. And the bishop covers h3. Great defense there by Firefly. Wow. He survived. And now it's black's turn to be desperate. No more bishop covering the b7 square, so knight check here and it's all over, I think. Yeah, rook on g8 first. Oh, he just handles this so well, zyxon. Calmly just combining attack and defense. Nothing that black can do with this rook. The queen is just covering all the squares, and now it comes with check. Everything comes with check. White can pick up f5 with check as well if he likes to. Pawn here, queen. Yeah, queen on c8. And 4-0, what a game! That must have hurt because Mugwort really dug in there. And taking on d1 was dangerous. And look at this. Yeah, I thought there was something here. A rook check. Because black doesn't have any good defenders. Let's say knight here. Rook takes. And boop. Checkmate. But this is still good for white. Knight g6 with the same idea is still mating. And rook at e8 was the correct continuation. So this is where black turned the game around. Finding a safe haven in the corner. And taking on g2 was a practical decision, but not a theoretically very good one. Queen at f4 was not the best. And taking the knight was still good for black. But here he lost the thread. And white won. Okay. 4-0 zyxon. And that's the thing with zyxon. He's a very annoying player. He's a very pleasant, nice one. in person, but he's so tricky to play against. Mugwort has had his chances in every game, but zyxon has managed to win. Yeah, I love the defensively skilled players. And here, zyxon is going for a rather unusual opening. And simply counter-punching in the center. Knight hitting bishop and pawn, and you always have to look out for trades where black gets 2 pawns for a piece. But the white bishops, they look very dominating here. So black needs to find some way quickly to release the tension and get 2 pawns for a piece. But as soon as he gives up a knight at h5 looks very promising for white, hitting the g7 square. And it's not easy to defend. You can't go to h7 because the bishop is controlling h7, and if you go to g8, if you have a pawn at h7 is annoying. So wisely, black tries to shield the king's side with a pawn here on f5. And also now building a beachhead here on e4. So if you can get one more pawn, there's a pawn fork on e4. So I guess white really wanted that knight for h5. But I didn't quite like the looks of c4 because you lose control of d4 then. And possible queen trade here, and if the king takes, you have queen at g8, but yeah, this is interesting. Using the back rank. But of course the knight is covering d8 as well. So and e5 is hanging. Although knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, you have knight at f6, which probably is very irritating for black. This is probably too much for black to handle. So white decided to take on f7 instead. That's interesting. I thought maybe knight at f6, pawn takes, knight takes. But is the king okay after king e7 maybe? Who knows? So black is trying to attack and defend at the same time, but this leaves the f6 square open, and I'm afraid black isn't doing very well here. Knight e4, maybe you can start running over here because the queen is threatened, but Yeah, a move like this just drags the black king out in the open. Probably c6 also. And now you can't take here, but now the pawn on c4 isn't obstructing any queen checks. Look at that black king dancing around. Did Mugwort just mess this one up as well? He's down to his last 10 seconds. And something has gone at least a little bit wrong, I think. Sure, you can win the queen now, but black is still alive. Oh, that's the problem. Because in case you go back, white had queen at e7. Well, that was well deserved. Mugwort got his first win. And the opening was just a bit too dubious, I think. White got too much momentum. But black almost made a comeback. But not quite. Okay. So, I think... well, Mugwort deviating here. So let's see what they have prepared in this line. And zyxon is one of the few players who don't mind grabbing the piece on f6 that black is offering, and he just tries to defend his way out of the black initiative. Because when you spend 2 moves to take this piece, you also open up the e file for black. And the knight you have in hand doesn't have any great prospects. No good squares really to put the knight on. So from a theoretical point of view, this should be fine, or even more than fine for black, I think. Personally, I would like to have my bishop still on d7, so I would probably take with the pawn, but maybe you can throw in a check first. I suppose is the idea to take on h3? Nope. You want to do something here on the h file. Actually, in this position, there could be a problem having the rook on e8 rather than f8, because if the g file opens and there's some knight check here, f7 could be hanging. And the black pieces are quite powerful here. He's trying to open the center. And here's why the knight is not a great defensive piece. You see all these are tied up, and this isn't a happy camper either, out on the rim. So you would like to maybe close the E file. I'm just not sure. Pawn at E2 doesn't look very strong either. You could probably maybe take and then give up the rook, take here and take H3 and so now the queen is aiming for the bishop on B4, I guess. So bishop takes here, you probably take, but this is still interesting. Still interesting, or I should say probably very good for black. I would certainly look at bishop takes and even rook takes. Very powerful black initiative here. And when white takes, black will bring his queen. Oh, sorry. That was just a clean. He just won the queen. But I thought maybe queen takes here was interesting. I mean, it's controlling so many squares around the white king. And then you can say maybe knight at C2 for later. I don't know. Oh, he goes for the throat. But E2 is covered, so pawn at E2, you can go to F2 maybe. So instead, black checks from a distance. I suppose you can waste a pawn here. Goes somewhere here, and a knight check looks awkward. So now you have time maybe to do something, although black can pick up, with double check, he can pick up a bishop on C3. On the other hand, this gives white some luft for the king. And getting the rook to D2 was really nice for white here. Although the queen is threatening here, and pawn F2. Ouch. This is just costing way too much material, I think. White is defenseless against the flurry of black checks. Okay, maybe he wasn't handling that well. But as you can see, black is in great shape here. Black won the opening, and maybe white never got back into the game. Well, here he actually is back in the game. Black should have taken C3 first. Yeah, of course. But this is also good. How is this move? Aha, there are problems here in the back rank. Rook at B8. So that wasn't good at all. And nice little pseudo sacrifice there by black just to keep the checks going. Yeah, fine attacking game by Mugwort. And what do we have here? And we're out of the book after just a few moves. Obviously white is better here, but it cost white a minute on the clock. And black is just passive here, so it doesn't have any apparent weaknesses. So white shouldn't be spending time looking for a killer blow, because there isn't one in this position. You should just keep on playing. And if white can keep the black queen out of play, that's good for white. But now it got back into the center and actually back to d8. Still, black is very passive here. So a little tactical trick here. Do you take with the queen? Yeah. If the queen takes, you have a knight fork here. But black suddenly starts attacking a little bit. That looks like the lion's army outside of Mordor or something. Not a big threat, but with the queen swap maybe coming, it's not so far away from mating the white king. So if pawn takes, pawn at g2, I think this is the correct solution for white. Black doesn't really want to put something here. White probably can take here, and there are queen checks that can pick up black material in the vicinity of the white king. And obviously you can't go in this direction because of knight takes c7. So I wonder, do you pick up the knight? Because the knight is defending some squares here around the king. He prefers to pin it, immediately threatening queen at d8 mate. And here joins the other rook, and the white attack is just too strong here. If I was white, I might have considered taking on h3. Just to say you can't touch me. And there's most likely something forced here. Knight at b5 probably, covering the rook. But why do you choose to bury your queen on c7? That's slightly odd, I think. But it's probably enough anyway. The d7 pawn is pinned, and that's the reason also. That's the answer to the question. Why do you choose to bury your queen? It's because you've found a forced mate. That's the answer. Nice comeback there by Mugwort. It's 4-3 zyxon. And zyxon probably needs to work a little bit on his openings, because he's been struggling in the opening against Mugwort. And in this game, wisely, he doesn't take on f6. He just tries to get a position where he can start playing. Get out of the book. And apparently he got out of the book by playing knight e2, which is probably an innocuous move. No, go zyxon. So someone suggested 5-5, and Shu Nakamura suggested 5-5, and maybe we'll see 5-5. So I'm a bit concerned here. Maybe white needs to spend a tempo just so you don't allow the pin here on the knight. I would go for bishop b4 here, I think. And the queen is sitting nicely on h4. It's difficult to touch. Attacking c3, meanwhile it's also taking care of the threat on c7. And also this might be a threat, because the pawn on f2 is pinned. Maybe white is looking to simply take on d5, give up the queen, and then get the knight check on c7. So castling would be a solution, probably. And that's also a solution because you're not long anyway. You're not threatening to take on d5 anymore. And I don't see any other move than taking on e3. I suppose it could go bishop g3, yeah. Well, there is an opportunity to pick up material here, taking on f1 and then retreating with the queen, but this is also a possibility. So black has an extra pawn now. d4 is hanging. Looks like once again Mugwort has won the opening, but will he win the game? That's an entirely different matter. And white is simply one step behind here. You can't even pick up the knight because of rook d5. So this will take care of the annoying f6 pawn. And you get a little check there on b3 before you pick up the pawn, and there are also, well, this king is heading out on the board, it's getting mated. 4-4. What a turn around. And I think Mugwort had it from hello in this game. I actually didn't like bishop e3 much. Already knight e2 is dubious. Well, it got him out of the book, but it cost him. Bishop g4 is the correct response. And here, instead of bishop e3, which is e3 is not, you're not sure that that is the correct square for the bishop. And this is simply good for black. Yeah, castle short was probably even better. And here castling short, as I mentioned, is probably a good solution. B takes is recommended. Yeah, why didn't he take with the B pawn? But after this, yeah, you could pick up F1, as I mentioned also. But this is probably even stronger. And take on D4 was even stronger than retreating with the queen. Ah, just hopeless for white. Let's look at this game instead. Some sort of theoretical line, which is theoretically good for white, I think. And Mugwort has blitzed the moves out. Looks like we finally got out of the book, but this is a very passive queen placement. That looks strong. Pawn takes, knight g7 check, king f8, bishop h6, something like that. Crazyhouse so confusing. Crazyhouse so much fun. Confusing can sometimes be the equivalent of fun. But why not bishop at h6? I'm not as convinced by this move. Because let's say the bishop was here instead. Then you could simply take on e6, threaten mate. Well, the reason they play fast here, it's not the same as in Bughouse, where you need to play fast to stay ahead on the clock and have the better time so you can control the piece flow. But it's just that they simply don't have much time at all. Yeah, objectively, what is better to start with? The tempo is more important than in chess. So, whereas in chess you have a very, very, very slightly advantage. You have a maybe plus 1 and plus 2 or something as white in Crazyhouse. But on the other hand, it quickly turns around in Crazyhouse. And I'm starting to think that this is turning around right about now. What if you take on f3? Excellent defensive move here. Threatening to take on g2, and after a possible queen trade, the opening of the h file just favors black heavily. Maybe you do the same thing again. Queen g5, queen trade, knight retreats. Oh, this is nice. Nice. Mate in the corner. The h file got open. And I think black was in bad shape, maybe somewhere. Theoretically, this is a long forced line. And here, knight at f6, white is doing so well. But what was there something wrong with taking here? So apparently the bishop check there was better, but taking on d8 was bad. Now black got back into the game. Still better for white, apparently, theoretically, but hard to defend. And after this, the queen trade, it was just over. Yeah, knight f5, strong move. And another cute finish was this check. Capture and knight check here with the checkmate. So the question is, this is another pet line of zyxons, and I'm sure Mugwort has prepared something against this. Yeah, he's blitzing the moves out. Black is doing fine, but it's a very unbalanced position where white has pawns and black has the extra piece. And zyxon likes to fish in muddy waters, so I'm sure the position suits him quite well. This looks very natural, hitting f3 and h1. I wonder what the white idea was here. So I would be happy to take on f3, I suppose. Oh, he's just putting this giant pawn wall on the board. And maybe if, let's say, the bishop retreats, you can develop, and you haven't moved your king, have you? Then castle long, maybe, at some point. So we got a position. Maybe black is threatening bishop takes and knight e2. This looks a little bit risky. Queen takes. So maybe white wants to chase the queen, take on g5, maybe bishop e3, just to get his pieces in order and then complete the development. That looks like a very sound idea. You only have a pawn for the piece as white here, but no, you have you have 2 pawns for the piece. You still have 2 pawns for the piece. Yeah, so this should be fine for white, I think. This is not so fast. And even if the pawn starts advancing even further, white has decent resources to defend. Although, where are the white attacking chances? I'm thinking if the going gets tough here on the queen side, white might consider just blocking and then maybe head back into the center. That's an interesting square for the knight. I suppose black just wants to play knight at b3. Next move. I think zyxon missed this chance. So knight at b3 certainly looks very interesting here. King is running over to the king's side instead. Yeah, nice square for the bishop. If you can pick up a rook, rook at c2 is a very big problem. Although now, after the knight check, the knight can take back. So, very nice little bishop check here. If you block on d7, white has knight takes and take on a8. Looks like white has this under control. Speeding up a little bit. And one of these days, queen takes here, knight h6 could be mate almost. So, do you go to e6 just to prevent the king from ever coming back? This is threatening mate on g5. And I'm not sure how to defend this other than queen takes e. Oh, surely this is just losing. What on earth is going on here? Zyxon just lost it. And great prediction there by Anju Nakamura. Let's look at the finish because it was quite an exciting one. Very unclear. But, oh, this just allows knight e6. And bishop at b5. Strong sequence here for white. g5 looks like the right move. Wanting to pick up that knight on f6. And apparently this wasn't so strong after all. But here, yeah, h4, just getting an even better grip on the g5 square, preparing things rather than letting them slip. And this was just a bluff. If you take with the bishop, it's made in one, but but clearly white is losing here. But here, h4, cold-blooded attack. Spend a tempo, let him do whatever he likes, because g5 is coming. Yeah, taking on f6 was just losing. Okay, thank you so much for watching. What is the next match on Tuesday? Unfortunately, I won't be able to do any streaming from the Clearcast Blitz Bullet match. Let's have a quick look at the overall standings. In the top with 63%, Fumitox, who has won against Spinal Tap 6-4 and Bugzilla 6.5, 3.5. Legion Destroyer in second. He's won, beat Blitzbullet 7-3 very convincingly, beat Mugwort 6-4, beat PKN 7-3, but lost to Bugzilla. And Bugzilla in his turn lost to Fumitox. And I think this is the way this tournament is going to evolve. A lot of close matches. You remember last year, so many matches finishing 8-2, 9-1, or even 10-0. Especially when Katask was playing. So, 63% at the top. And thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my live streams. At the moment, I have exactly 0 subscribers, so you would be actually my first one. And I hope you have an excellent weekend and see you probably sometime next week. I think they will schedule some match that I'll be able to stream. Take care and see you again soon. Bye bye.